Hey everyone, Jen here, back with another episode of the Bob's Burgers podcast. What's on the burger? So this is going to be episode 6, Sheesh, Cab Bob. So in this one we start out with another thing that I really like in the Bob's Burger series of how Bob Belcher and Jimmy Pesto don't like each other. And it is kind of hilarious because Bob is the burger guy and Jimmy is the pizza guy. And they both, I feel like, try and one-up each other. Now, as they go through, Jimmy is the guy that is always trying to, bust Bob's balls over everything or whatever. And this is another aspect of it that I really like is Jimmy Jr., which is Jimmy Pesto's son. He's kind of out there with some things that he does with his character. It doesn't really seem like there's a groove to the madness for some of it. And we're not exactly sure, I feel like, where his sexual orientation lies sometimes. Because later on he does have a friend that comes out that almost seems like him and Jimmy at some point could be a thing if the series ran for them turning into adults. And Tina likes him, so that seems like a viable option as well at different times. So, anyway, we kind of have at times between Jimmy Jr. and Tina more of like a Romeo and Juliet situation, just because both families kind of sort of don't like each other. You know, Bob not liking Jimmy, things like that. And that plays into this episode pretty strong, as well as future episodes. I don't really think that that Jean or Louise or Linda really care about it. They just know that you can't really get in the middle of it between Bob and Jimmy. So I kind of wonder if they ever went and got a pizza, like, do they have to go somewhere else or do they get it from Jimmy? And, you know, so we do have this part where Jimmy is basically trying to tell Bob off, and Louise and Jean are there and trying to help him with a comeback. Not working so well, but Bob tries anyway and realizes that after Jimmy leaves, he walks back to the restaurant and was like, I forgot, or I didn't get my opportunity to really give a comeback to Jimmy. And I hate that. So it's kind of like with Jimmy and Bob, like either one of them that don't like the other one whenever either one of them does anything, or if one of them kind of forgets and doesn't get to do something, then the other one's mad about it. So it's kind of a weird situation, I would say. But we do find out that in a few days it will be Tina's birthday, and they are trying to figure out what it is, what they're going to do. And Tina will be turning 13, and so they are trying to figure out how to throw one of like the best birthday parties for her, just because she is turning 13, and ask her what she would like for her birthday, basically. And she's very specific on this, which is odd, but that's just Tina in the series. Tina would like a co-ed dance party at the restaurant with the restaurant closed, and would like some lights and other stuff where she gets the opportunity to kiss Jimmy Jr. So really weird. Oh yeah, and there has to be a fog machine. That's another request that she has. Now everything is kind of crazy at the moment because we do also find out that Louise broke the deep fryer, and so that is what's really hitting them right now, that they're going to just make ends meet by the end of the month. They don't really have more, which this entices, between these two things, it's kind of a rock and a hard place for Bob, which all of us have been there. I feel like the rock and a hard place for what we can and can't do. Of course, Louise tries to cook up a scheme and say, hey, I'll train you to be the best kisser, so you can kiss Jimmy Jr. And they find out that they are going to probably get a pushback on their rent, for the area. So Bob has to talk to Mr. Fishoder, which I think at some points Mr. Fishoder is pretty funny when he's in here as well, just because of certain things that go on around him. And everything is pretty weird. Mr. Fishoder is pretty weird, but when Mr. Fishoder's brother gets involved, it gets a little weirder, even though it's more calmed down. Mr. Fishoder is kind of like a big kid at some points. But he is the entrepreneurial type. Gosh. Sorry about that. My tongue got tied. But Bob goes and asks him, and so this is what Mr. Fishoder does. He says, meet me on the pier. And so they're standing out on the edge of this pier by the ocean. And it almost seems like Mr. Fishoder is like some gangster that's about to like shoot Bob and, feed him to the fishes kind of sort of thing. But he's like, no, I like the fog. The fog feels great underneath my cloak that I have, So, what did you want, Bob? Bob says, hey, I'm going to need to see if I can get like an extension on our lease, maybe, and go from there because, we might not be able to do it, which we have heard, in this situation right here. We did hear that Bob has done this before. And so he said, I know we agreed that we would never do this again, but, but instead of doing that, Mr. Fishoder gives him the option of being a cabbie around town at night for a while. I think it's like 12 o'clock at night to 6 or something. But so he can run his restaurant and make cash, to do the party and to pay rent and fix the fryer, as well as do some other stuff. So that opens it up. He gives him a hat and goes from there. It seems like it's going to turn out to be a really good thing. And we do get this part here where we do see that Bob loves his family a lot. He puts too much on himself, I would say, because Bob is going to work the restaurant at like 6 in the morning until like 10 at night or something. And then after that, have a little break. And then from 12 until 6 in the morning, he is going to be cabbying. So Bob has virtually like no time to do like anything. But he does get into that. That is the big part of this episode as well. We do see Louise's training regiment for Tina, which is, hey, you have to chew 10 strips of gum and do that for a little while. So I forgot if they had a timer set of how long they had to do it or something like that, but it was a while. And then Bob finally gets in his cab. His first pickup is a drunk guy that just vomits all over him. His second pickup is this couple that is trying to have sex in the back of the cab. Third one is the other guy. I'm not sure what his name is, but we see him all over, which is the guy that rollerblades. He rollerblades and he's in a Speedo and he's got like a blonde mullet and then no shirt. We see him like all the time. I think we've seen him every episode so far, but he's kind of like a no-name character. But all that stuff happens. Almost every time Bob pulls the taxi over or the cab over to wash it out, because of what everybody keeps doing. And, it's just a thing. He just keeps pulling it over to clean it out. So I guess he assumes that, cabs are supposed to be kind of clean. And while I know that we do have that, if anybody else has like anything that they would like to say on a cab system where you live at, let me know, or a taxi. Now I know the Uber and Lyft and things like that are a lot better because they have to basically have their cars clean for you to do that. On top of, they don't want anything there for you to be able to steal or whatever, basically. But the other thing with this that is crazy is the fact of I've never really seen taxis presented in a good light where they were so clean as this. Usually there's some stuff on the floor or whatever, something like that, but it's just kind of weird. And this one doesn't actually have a glass back. So that's another part of this, is there's not the protective visor in between the driver and anybody else. So that's something. But finally we get to like one of the last stops for Bob tonight, which is he is picking up three like cross-dressing strippers, or not strippers, prostitutes. And I can't remember, I think he calls them transvestites maybe. I can't remember. So that he might just call them trans. But he does tell them basically that they're beautiful, and it's just kind of funny on that part. Like, he knows he can like talk to these people, and I'm kind of wondering if he feels comfortable knowing that they're men that are also women, or if it's because he's married and everything, because they do kind of flirt with him a little bit. He goes, no, I'm a married man, but they end up becoming like really good friends. That's the funny part about it. With all of them, that Bob becomes friends with these prostitutes and, lets everybody know, like, hey, I have learned this other part of town that I don't ever usually go to. Then we have IE part 2 of Louise's training regiment, where instead of tying a cherry stem with her tongue, Tina has to tie a banana into a bow with her tongue. Now, how she ends up doing it, I have no idea, but she basically does. And we have this first night where Bob is finally done with cabbying and just falls asleep on top of Jean at the dinner table. And yeah, so, we have so many more days of this to go from. But there is a problem arising here soon that we will have to figure out. Anyway, let's take a short break and we'll be back. Everyone, and we are back with What's on the Burger, a Bob's Burgers podcast, presented to you by the Otakuology podcast. So last week, what we know so far, basically on this episode, is that Bob is being a cabbie, trying to get more money to fix a deep fryer, pay his rent for the restaurant, as well as pay to have all of this stuff for Tina's 13th birthday party. So last we left off, I did bring up that we had a problem rising in the wind. And so that problem that we find out is that Jimmy Jr. is not going to be able to make it to Tina's party because Jimmy Pesto Sr. and Bob do not like each other. So he does not want his kid to go to the other guy's kid's birthday party. And that becomes a situation in and of itself. But hopping back into Bob's second night of, we assume is Bob's second, it might be his third night, because he knows these people really well at this point. He has a guy that asks basically for a lady of the night, and he takes him to these ladies to sleep with. And when Bob comes home, he basically says, I kind of feel like I'm a pimp because whenever people ask for a good time, that's where he takes them. Which I wonder if he gets a cut of profit maybe. I'm not sure because that's never brought up. That would be cool to know if Bob makes a little extra because of bringing them people. But we have that where everything is going on. They're trying to figure it out. And Bob goes and asks Jimmy, hey, what can we do for this to happen? And he goes, this can happen if you shave off your mustache and give it to me in a bag. That's what I want. And I want it as basically a trophy for me to shame Bob, because obviously he knows that Bob wears this mustache all the time, or has a mustache all the time. That's kind of Bob's signature thing, is having this stash, an apron and a stash really is Bob's big thing. Because looking at Bob for conventions and stuff to cosplay, I've looked at this before, and his outfit is not very hard to put together. So, it's always his kind of white gray shirt and black to dark gray sweatpants, depending on what it is. Slide on nonstick shoes with socks, and of course, his white apron and his mustache. I mean, there's not very much to Bob Belcher if you're going to cosplay him. So knowing that there's not really that much as a signature thing for Bob, just because out of the rest of the family, Bob actually doesn't have a lot of color to him. Everybody else, somebody has red, somebody has blue, somebody has green, and somebody has yellow. But nobody has like the white that Bob does, so Bob doesn't really have any color to his character besides his skin. It's pretty funny, actually thinking about it, looking at it. But we have that option where he says, that's what we're going to do. He gets in and he brings it up to the ladies, and they go around and have a good time. Basically, they pay, I guess, to have drinks for Bob, because Bob is, drunk at this point. He is so tired and everything that he ends up falling asleep underneath one of the, stainless steel tables on the lower shelf underneath it, by like the cooking grease and stuff, I guess is what it is. So we have finally seen that this is wear and tear on Bob. Doing this cabbie thing is basically taking it out of him and going from there. But we do know that basically Bob is having this stuff done. He is able to do all this stuff. And as all of the kids from Tina's birthday are there, Bob forgot that he also invited the ladies, / gentlemen that he has been basically talking to and hanging out with the entire week, and they come to Tina's birthday party as well. Now, this doesn't make anything bad about it, but, you know, it has more. It puts a different spin to Tina's birthday party, which is pretty fun. You have a few other ones that come in that are other ones that we didn't see earlier in this episode, as well as some of the other people that Bob drove around, that they actually invite them to come as well. I think it's funny. I can't remember the other three's names, but we do have this one that walks in whose name is Marshmallow, and that's kind of a funny time with that as well. I kind of wish that we had more parts, like we knew who Marshmallow was, like during the daytime, maybe as his male persona, or a little more of her at night and what that pertained to, I guess. So we finally get to this part where Jimmy still can't come, and Bob ends up going in, and he's going to give Jimmy Pesto Sr. his mustache, so that way he can get Jimmy Jr. to be there. So he shaves it off. This is one of the first times, I think only times, we see Bob without a mustache. And he goes over, and these three people know who Jimmy Pesto is. I don't know if it's because they go to the same club sometimes. I think all of them have waited on him at different points. But Jimmy Pesto is into basically acting like a baby, and like baby play or whatever it's called, where he talks like a little baby, you know, like instead of saying love, he says love, stuff like that. So that's what he's into, and all these ladies know who he is. So he ends up letting Jimmy come over to the party for that. Tina comes up and does say, you know, basically like, I want to kiss you. And her and Jimmy Jr. do get this kiss, which I think is the first and only time this really happens. I don't think this happens anymore. But that is kind of the end of this episode of Bob's Burgers, where everybody has been there. All of the people that Bob met cabbying, that were regulars, people that were around that, Jimmy Jr. got to come, the family, and Tina's class. All of them got to basically come to this party, and that is where it closes out, basically, of everybody basically having a good time, because the one thing that Tina wanted as the kiss did happen. So, more in this episode. I feel like it's really good. You know, again, talking about Bob being a good dad and taking on the two jobs just to run the restaurant and be able to take care of a bigger event than what he probably actually wants to, and wearing himself ragged by only getting like 3 or 4 hours of sleep, is is a thing. I think that that is a good thing that shows, what some parents are willing to do to go through for their kids. And that we do have this whole opportunity through this that, you can be friends. Because I feel like sometimes, I would still say this is kind of weird, the prostitute bit, maybe. But, we do see that Bob is accepting of, trans people and things like that, too. So I think that this whole episode is a fourth and coming episode for a bunch of different things, It's good for parenthood. It's good for trans lives, as well as throws a little kink in there for you if somebody's into that. Just a lot of different stuff like that. I think this episode really accomplished that part with everything. But anyway, this entire episode, this is the time when Bob was a cabbie, and we don't get to see this again in the future, so I really wonder if there will ever be an opportunity like this for Bob again. That's some of the stuff that I hate, is we kind of get the one-shot episodes where it progresses the family, but it doesn't progress things outside of that. And we don't exactly get to see if anything else is going to go on with that. So, but anyway, thanks for listening. As always, we'll see you next Tuesday. And remember, always check out part of our other podcast stuff for our platform, whether it's the Pokemon podcast, the main Otakuology podcast, or any of our other side adventures that me and Mike do and throw out. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. I will catch you later. Bye.